My name is Nina. I am 22 years old. I live in a small town with my mother. We are not rich. My mother works in a school kitchen. I work in a small clothing shop. Every day I fold shirts, clean shelves, and help customers. It is not a bad job, but it is not my dream. My dream is fashion design. Since I was a little girl, I loved dresses. I loved colors, cloth, buttons, and long skirts. When other children played outside, I sat at the table and drew clothes on old paper. I made dresses for my dolls from pieces of fabric. My mother always smiled and said, "One day, you will make real dresses." But life was hard. We did not have money for a big school in the city. So I stayed in town and worked. Still, I did not stop drawing. Every night, after work, I sat near the window and made new sketches. Red dresses, blue coats, white wedding gowns, summer skirts. I kept all my drawings in a big brown folder under my bed. One afternoon, a rich woman came into our shop. She wore a beautiful cream coat and black gloves. She looked at many dresses, but she did not buy anything. Then she noticed a small drawing near the cash desk. I became nervous. It was my drawing. I sometimes made little dress sketches when the shop was empty. I forgot to hide that one. The woman picked it up and asked, "Who drew this?" I looked down and said, "I did." She studied the picture for a moment. Then she asked, "Are you a designer?" I gave a small sad smile. "No, I only dream of it." She looked at me again and said, "Dreams are important, but work is more important." Then she left. I thought that was the end. But the next day, she came back. This time she brought a business card. Her name was Mrs. Hart. She owned a dress studio in the city. She said, "Bring me your other drawings tomorrow." I stared at her in shock. "My drawings?" I asked. She nodded. "Yes. If this one is yours, I want to see more." That night, I could not sleep. I was excited, but also afraid. What if she laughed at my work? What if my drawings were childish? What if I embarrassed myself? My mother sat beside me and said, "Nina, if you do not try, you will always ask yourself what could happen." So the next morning, I took my brown folder and got on the bus to the city. Mrs. Hart's studio was beautiful. There were mirrors, fabric rolls, mannequins, and soft lights. I felt small the moment I walked in. She led me to a table and said, "Show me." My hands were shaking as I opened the folder. She looked through every drawing in silence. 1 minute passed, then another. My heart was beating very fast. At last she placed one drawing on the table. It was a simple green dress with a thin belt and soft sleeves. "This one," she said. "Why did you choose this shape?" I swallowed and answered, "Because not every woman wants to look loud. Some want to look calm and beautiful." Mrs. Hart raised her eyes and looked at me with interest. Then she asked about another dress. Then another. Soon she was asking many questions. And for the first time in my life, someone listened to my ideas seriously. At last she said, "You have talent. But talent is only the beginning." I nodded quickly. "I can work hard." She said, "Good. Then come here every Saturday. You will help in the studio. You will learn. I will not pay you at first." I did not care about money at that moment. I almost cried from happiness. So my new life began. From Monday to Friday, I worked in the small town shop. On Saturdays, I took the bus to the city and worked in Mrs. Hart's studio. I cleaned tables, carried fabric, watched the seamstresses, learned how to cut patterns, and listened to every word Mrs. Hart said. It was not easy. Sometimes I made mistakes. I cut fabric the wrong way. I dropped pins. I measured badly. Once I even ruined an expensive sleeve. I thought Mrs. Hart would send me away, but she only said, "Cry later. Learn now." So I stayed. Months passed. I became faster, smarter, better. My hands learned what my mind always wanted to do. One day, Mrs. Hart gave me a task. She said, "A young singer needs a dress for a local concert. I want you to design it." I thought I heard her wrong. "Me?" I asked. "Yes," she said. "Not me, you." I was terrified. For 3 nights, I drew and changed the design again and again. At last, I made a dress in deep blue with silver details. It was elegant but young, soft but strong. Mrs. Hart looked at the sketch and said, "This is good. Now make it real." Making it was much harder than drawing it. The fabric slipped. The lines had to be exact. I worked for hours and hours. My back hurt. My fingers hurt. But I did not stop. When the dress was finished, it looked even better than I imagined. The singer came to the studio and tried it on. For a moment, no one said anything. Then she smiled, a big, bright smile. She turned to the mirror and said, "I love it." I felt so much joy that I could hardly breathe. That evening, when the singer wore my dress on stage, Mrs. Hart took me to the concert hall. We stood in the back and watched. The lights were bright. The music was loud. And there, under all those lights, was my dress. People clapped. The singer looked beautiful and confident. Tears came to my eyes. Mrs. Hart looked at me and said, "Now you are not only a girl with sketches. Now you are a designer." A week later, something even bigger happened. A photo from the concert appeared in a magazine. Under it were the words, "Dress by Nina Vale." I bought 3 copies. My mother cried when she saw it. She held the magazine to her chest and said, "I told you. One day, you would make real dresses." After that, more people came to the studio and asked for my designs. Not many at first, but enough. I still had much to learn, but now I believed in myself in a new way. A year later, I left the small town shop and began working full-time with Mrs. Hart. I still work hard every day. I still make mistakes sometimes. I still feel fear before new designs. But now, when I sit at my table and draw, I do not feel like a poor girl with a secret dream. I feel like myself, and I know one true thing. A dream is not dead just because life is hard. Sometimes it is only waiting for the right door to open. Moral: